Unanimous.
We'll now consider action item 90, the application for charter renewal for Southwest Leadership Academy Charter School. Can I have a motion and a second to consider action item 90?
I move to approve a notice of non-renewal to commence non-renewal proceedings against Southwest Leadership Academy Charter School.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Board members, are there any questions or discussion on action item 90?
This is one, too, that gave me angst as I listened to some of the testimony. And in thinking of that population, which it seems to be heavy African, who I'm sure, as you said, they've gone through a lot. But I guess that's in a way why it's even more important that they have a school that is delivering on what their dream is in terms of being academically prepared to be competitive in the United States. And from what I see of the performance, there has been a failure to comply in special education policies and appropriate documentation of staffing requirements, enrollment practices, including the school's decision to implement a gender-based lottery. Personnel, serious concerns about the lack of documentation around mandated staff clearance. Speaking again to what Board Member Streeter said, some people may say, oh, well, that's minor. But it's really not minor if you happen to have somebody in your school who has been identified as harmful to children. And then when something happens, we're on the stick, and everybody out in the public will be saying, well, why did they should have known, and why did they let that persist? So I believe that while I'm empathetic with some of the concerns, I think it just behooves us that at the point, if indeed, if they go through their process of appeals and et cetera, that we do take it over, are allowed to take it over, that we do consider that this population and make sure we're providing in the needs that are necessary for helping them to make that acclimation.
Well, this is not a school that we'd be taking over. This is not a Renaissance school. For me, this is a sad story. This is a school, the last time we renewed them, it was one of the best charter schools that we had. We doubled the number of seats that the school had. You know, this is not, you know, we were mistreating. This school was high performing, and we doubled the number of seats. And it's sad to see a school go into free fall like this, to the point that we don't have very many schools that fail on all three domains, you know, where they fail academically, they fail in terms of finances, they fail in terms of organizational compliance. And to see a school go from being one of the best, where we double the seats, to now we're talking about closing it down,
says something is wrong.
And it's up to the board of that charter school to remedy it. Our recourse is to do what we're doing now, and that's to begin non-renewal proceedings. And so I support the motion for non-renewal.
I mean, this one also hurts a lot too, especially hearing the comments and just hearing the history, which precluded my time on the board. But when I'm hearing the arguments raised in various letters and correspondence raising race, I just don't know how race can compel you to have somebody on your board who was convicted of bribery and things like that. Political, I don't want to put names out there, but these are concerning, right? In addition to that, you know, we have also issues with background checks. I just don't know how any framework can preclude you, if it's racist or not, from doing these type of, I would say, argue, kind of the bare necessity things to run a school with publicly funded dollars with publicly funded requirements. And we only get one bite of the apple every 5 years, and these issues seem endemic. Not a once in a year thing, or it just started to happen during the pandemic, but the story that was laid out to us within the recommendation documents is that this was something that was a systemic and not a gradual, but a consistent decline in some of the things that don't relate. If it was only the academics and the lack of PSSAs, you got me. We're gonna hold off and we're gonna wait. But when it comes to things like this that that connect to whether the school will even be open in the middle of a school year because of financial issues, because of
Right.
lower enrollment reasons, whatever the reasons they are, and issues of safety with our children. I'm sorry, I have to, it's hard for me to just say no to that.
Yeah, and I mean, it is a scenario where every cylinder is off. Right? And so it's very difficult, but you know, the data in general suggests when something grows, right? When it essentially doubles, that ability to go where you were performing well and scale to a next level is difficult. And I don't know, we can't diagnose it here exactly. But I'm glad at least we're having this conversation now. And as we consider generally how we engage and how we communicate and get people to participate earlier in the process so it's not at the midnight hour. I think this will help fuel how we do that going forward.
And can I say one more quick thing? To me, it hurts that I'm compelled to say these things about other people who look like me running organizations, because I don't want to embarrass them, right? I would rather not have to say these things, but I felt like I've been compelled due to the letters that we've received in the outpouring in the conversations and the misstatements of that we had a moratorium on all Black-led charter schools, and we have documentary evidence to support the otherwise. It is now I feel compelled to give you the facts, and it hurts to say these things as well. And you know, then there's other issues, gender-based lottery with using publicly funded dollars. I mean, I think these kind of counter, you know, what public dollars maybe should be used for. Again, I don't want to get too nitty gritty with what the school does, because I don't want to seem like I'm punching down on them. But these are the facts, and these are our children, and we have a fiduciary duty to care about them and let the chips fall where they may at the end of the day.
Board Member Fix Lopez.
Yeah, I think what's most disappointing, right? So we heard the community come out and talk tonight, and we heard about the population of the school. And I can say as an ESL instructor myself at the Community College of Philadelphia, we have a large West African population that we work with. And I think it's what we heard tonight is really critical for us to keep in mind and understand the value and importance of that, right? And so what's disappointing for me the most is that a lot of these compliance things that you're talking about were a choice by school leadership. They chose not to comply, right? They chose not to remove an individual from the board that had, you know, was a convicted felon. And so that I think is the most disappointing part. Like you said, you know, the academics is certainly a piece, but it's the bigger picture. And so when you choose as administrators to disregard the safety, right, with your clearance compliance checks, that it's unfortunate, because I think it was largely self-inflicted.
Well, can I say one more thing, Board President? I think
This is your last.
yes.
Well, actually, let's hear from Ms. Thompson,
Yes.
and then you can make your last comment.
Thank you, Board President Wilkerson. For me, as somebody who has family members in that area, so I'm familiar with the neighborhood. I'm familiar with those schools. It's not like the surrounding schools are any better, and there are schools. So they literally, the children would be going from one bad situation to another bad situation, unless their family members decide to, I don't know, homeschool or some other alternative. At least with some of these, there's a better alternative. But like, where are they going to go to get an education and feel safe? That section of the city, that's not something we can control, but there's safety concerns, and that's not our challenge. So when you're talking about, if you wasn't going to that school, you're not going to go to the other school that's nearby, because as a parent, you're fearing or you're concerned about the safety of your loved one. So that, for me, makes it difficult, because I know the neighborhood and I know the schools near there and where they're going to go. Thank you.
Board Member Street.
And I think I just kind of wanted to say as well. I mean, I'm not assuming that they're choosing not to do it. I'm not assuming either of that. But what I will assume is I think that certain schools or certain leaders come to the table with less resources than other schools, and that might impact their capabilities and their capacities to comply with the law. and with what we require with the charter school office and the Board of Education. But at the end of the day, we're not given the tools necessary by charter school law to think equitably about resources. We have to look at each charter school, how they are with the funds they're allotted per enrollment and make decisions. But I do have some compassion for the fact that maybe it appears that some of these charters just don't have the resources that some of the other non-Black led charters or non-single entity or individually led charters might have.
This is a school that was an excellent school, right? It's not a school that was starving for resources. It's not a school that didn't have the enrollment to support, the programming. This was an excellent charter school, and it's a question of management. And it's unfortunate how it plays out is unfortunate. But I feel compelled to initiate the non-renewal process. And with that, seeing no other comments, Ms. Rao, please take the vote.
Thank you. Board members, motion's been made and seconded to approve a notice of non-renewal to commence non-renewal proceedings against Southwest Leadership Academy Charter School. When I call your name, either vote yes if you're voting to approve the notice of non-renewal to commence non-renewal proceedings against Southwest Leadership Academy Charter School, or vote no. Ms. Danzy,
Yes.
Ms. Fix Lopez.
Yes.
Ms. Sally,
Yes.
Mr. Streeter,
Yes.
Ms. Thompson,
Yes.
President Wilkerson.
Yes.
Thank you. The action item passed.